So. Yeah. Well,
Because you
Hello, we're about ready to start the meeting. I see we have one member of the public. Can you confirm that you can hear us? Unmute your mic and confirm that you can hear us.
you probably just turned it on with the room. In the office.
Hello. Who's ever online, can you please unmute and confirm that you can hear us?
Not unmuting.
type it in the chat and
And they call themselves public?
that's what they have down as their name is public.
Okay.
Yeah, I will, where's chat here?
We have nobody in the office or anything we can talk.
We message to public. Please confirm. Hello. Who's ever online, can you please unmute your microphone and let us know that you can hear us? We're about to start the meeting.
You don't know how to mute me.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, well, I will. Start the meeting then. Okay, we're going to start the meeting. And we're going to go through the presentation. So fairly lengthy presentation. So whoever's online in the public, at any point, unmute your mic, let us know you can hear us. We're assuming that you either can or you're not at your computer right now, so we will start the meeting. Okay, so the agenda today, we're going to go to a bit of overview of the services, general summary and outlook, overall assessments impact, service by service discussion, and we'll look at some of the sub-regional assessments and their impact.
Okay. Could I ask? I noticed that the assessment for 2024 is 64 million, and then 2023 was 65 million. So our assessment has gone down.
Yes.
So that means the percent services will go up for the same dollar amount.
Yes, the amount per thousand will go up, and there'll be in any shared services, well, there'll be a slide.
Yeah.
So the village of Salmo went up a couple percent, so there's a shift from of shared costs from area G to Salmo. Okay. So just a reminder that this is a draft budget, and until the board of directors adopted at the March 21st meeting. So there's still some adjustments, some ongoing committee and commission meetings, and reviews in progress, as well as these public information sessions. So just a quick review of the process again. The board has 2 budget review meetings, one in January, last week, or a week and a half ago, and then committee and commission meetings, local service committees and directors and participants depending on the services. And the March 21st meeting is where the board adopts the budget for submission to the provincial government by March 31st. So services model, governance and administration. So basically the board of directors and then resource recovery is one of the major services, waste recycling, organics, recreation parks, fire, sustainability development, building inspection, some water systems under utilities, and taxation to fund various societies and organizations, including libraries, community halls, museums, recreation, etc. So 186 services at the regional district. So regional district spans from basically Yak up to Nakusp, Casper to Argenta in the other direction, divided into 11 electoral areas, A through K, and a number of member municipalities. So in December of 2023, the board adopted its latest strategic plan with the priorities on this slide. Organizational excellence, I'll just go through a few of them. Managing assets and service delivery in a fiscally responsible manner, and innovating to reduce the impact of waste. A final version of this document should be available online early next week. The nearly final version is in the December board minutes. So 2023 review, spending on wages, benefits, services is actually under budget, as some positions remain unfilled, and the utilities construction crew is also disbanded. However, user fees and other sales and service revenue items came under budget. Capital projects were also under budget, and any prior surpluses will be carried forward or are being carried forward to reduce taxation in future years. Assessment changes, so the increases in 2024 were much smaller than compared to the previous year. So these assessments are based on 23 property values. So I'll have a a slide that shows the amounts. This doesn't mean that taxation will go up by or down the same amount, and I'll explain a bit of that later. And also a concept to know is with the assessment change, you have market and non-market change. So market change basically means the current inventory properties is worth more or less. Non-market change is where total assessment value went up because of additional construction activity. So our annual property tax is calculated. Tax requisition amounts required to fund each of the 186 services are determined through the budget process. Completely separate from that, BC assessment determines the assessment values. And taking the requisition amount divided by the assessment value gives you the tax rate per 1,000 for each area and each service, and multiplied by the assessed value for each property gives you the property tax for each individual property for each service that it participates in. So residential assessment changes from 2023 to 2024, there was about a 4% average increase, ranging from -2 decrease to 14% increase, so a wide range. I'll have a graph that shows that. And then non-market change is roughly about 1%, and a third of that 4% is due to new construction and renovations. So this chart shows, basically takes the previous chart, the blue graph, the blue numbers show the increase in over 1 year. So area D is on the far left with the highest increase of 14%. And area G and F show a decrease. And Salmo is there with just over 1% increase. So the blue bars are the 1 year period. The 8-year average is the orange the orange bars are the 8-year average. So as you can see, the range for the 8-year average is much smaller, and that it basically shows that any 1 year you can have a wide range of changes compared to the average over the previous few years. So again, just focusing in on Salmo area G, 1.6% increase in Salmo, 1.7 decrease in area G. So these are the tax requisition and calculated residential tax rates per electoral area or municipality. So this is part of the budget package that's available online. Specifically for area G and Salmo, it's available in the web page for this evening's meeting. And for the entire regional district, it's available, the draft financial plan is available on the financial plan page on the regional district website. So this basically shows that the rate per thousand is increasing, as well as the percentage change for the above items. So this shows all the services, this table shows all the services that area G, that everybody in the area G participates in. There's a section that's not shown here, which is by defined areas. It's only a portion of area G participates, for instance, in some fire services, water, etc. So here's the village of Salmo. So everybody in the village of Salmo participates in these regional district services. So about an 8.9% increase, and the rate per thousand also increasing. So again, all of the detail in these services is available in the draft budget package. So about a 7% increase in the rate per thousand, both for Area G and Salmo for their respective requisitions. And this table is also available in the budget package, the full one. So basically it lists all the areas of municipalities and their taxation change. So ranging from a reduction of 2% in Silverton to a 14% increase in Area D, an average of about 9.3. So the overall outlook for 2024 is an average increase of 9.3% in taxation. However, the net average change for property owners is about 7.9 once you deduct the non-market assessment change, which averages about just over 1.3%. CPI increase on staff salaries and director stipends is 6.2%. This is a catch-up because of the smoothing calculation. So just as a comparison to historical increases in the public sector, haven't matched inflation changes if we look back both over 7 and 24-year period. And those that CPI increase is for directors is in bylaw, and for staff is in for salaried staff is in the terms and conditions of employment. So inflation and supply chain constraints will continue to have a cost impact over the coming year. And as well, interest rate increases are putting pressure on both short-term and long-term borrowing costs, with a partial offset from increased investment income. And one of the key items is continuing to implement an asset management program with an external consultants for recommendations expected in the coming months. And then also alignment with the new strategic plan, including items as effectiveness and efficiency of operations and administration, transparency, engagement with the public, focus on core service and managing assets and service delivery in a fiscally responsible manner. I'll go over S100. So this is general administration. Salmo and Area G both pay into it. So it includes corporate admin, finance, IT, HR, and actually all directors. So 6.2 wage increase, as we talked about. Mileage rates have increased. We're still catching up with some post-pandemic training. An increased spend in IT, cybersecurity, and transition to M365. Some funding for a new website, and overall year-over-year taxation increased 11% in the service. Rural administration, Area G only. So this is rural director expenses, fire services, overhead and bylaw services. Same increase as other in wages and directors as other services. A $474,000 UBCM fire training grant will support training costs, equipment, and other training costs in the coming year. So 15% total increase in requisitions, and it includes $75,000 for fire services command vehicle. So Salmo and Area G will go through a number of services, building inspection. So permit revenue softened last year, will continue at similar levels in 23. However, there's a small increase in number of permits issued compared to last year. Updated building bylaw fees and charges are in place, as well as application checklists. And we are looking in the process of implementing cloud permit, which is a cloud-based building permit application, application. So new staff are being onboarded. Oh, come on in.
It's good to see you here.
Oh, it's ended at 6.
Oh, it did?
Yes.
Okay, so
So-
just,
Oh, come on in and have a seat.
Oh, we're just getting into it.
Yeah.
but they're just getting into it.
Yeah, it started at 6, and
Yeah.
it's 6:20, so
Oh, okay.
there's a package right there.
Is that?
Yeah, that's.
Yeah, okay, that's the,
That's the actual budget.
that's the actual budget and, yeah,
I'll sit back here so I can
Okay.
see all of you.
all right,
In a cozy spot.
Thank you for showing up.
okay. So just let you know, we are in Cameron and
Oh, are you?
we're not recording this meeting, but potentially somebody in the public is, so
Oh, okay.
just to let you know. Okay, so building inspection, and last item is digitization of historical permit files. Planning operations are stable and on budget, and we're receiving some provincial funding to address new housing regulations, including, the new provincial legislation. So we're looking at subdivision servicing bylaw, housing needs assessment, and a couple other initiatives. GIS slight decrease to taxation, operations are stable, services continuing to establish new funding models, and also looking for opportunities to advance technology. Local conservation fund established, so this is not part of area G or Salmo, but just an interest to note that it has been growing. And so last year, actually this year, the first year Area F has joined it. So a potential LCF committee will be coming, and $130,000 have been awarded for 8 projects in 2024. Community sustainability, which is S105, which is one of the services. A number of projects for drinking water and watersheds, including watershed governance. Continued work with the Slocan Lake and Putin Lake partnerships. Climate action plans is being redrafted to incorporate engagement feedback. Community climate ambassadors, there's a 2-year partnership, and continued reporting through the state of climate action plan. So this presentation is not what you have there. What?
Okay, yeah, just kind of following.
Okay, so what is there? The first 2 pages of what you have there are, the first page is area G, and it shows all of the, I've got a version here that might be easier to use.
If you want, you can, oh, it's kind of slide up.
This version is easier to flip through than that one. It's, you just go page by page around and flipping them over.
Okay.
So are you in Salmo or are you in Salmo? So this is the page that would interest you, and sure.
And there's a little paper ruler for you and everything.
So it basically shows all of the services that, so the original list has 180 services, and there's about 15 or 20 that Salmo, the village of Salmo participates in.
So are some of those combined within these titles here?
No,
Those are all.
the number there is the number of the service. So there's about 160 services that Salmo does not participate in for the rest of the regional district.
Oh, I see.
S105 is community sustainability, and that's a perfect service in some of the areas.
Oh, okay. And what, why are some of the areas designated for that and others not?
Well, because the people, the directors for those areas had thought that the community sustainability would be a good service because for their area. It talks about planning for the future and like things they'd like to see and all sorts of things that would make their community better. There's a presentation yesterday on Calicut, and they were talking about how the area around the ocean was jammed. You couldn't drive through there, and for their long-term community sustainability plan, talked about how they could change the flow of traffic around the community and change things like that so that it'd be a better place to live. Those are all the kinds of things that happen.
Are you asking in general or just about the web service?
No, I was just asking,
How can we direct 180 services?
yeah, basically. So I just wondered if some of them were combined.
No, there's no combinations.
Are combined in the fact that all of us, all 20 areas must participate in waste, in resource recovery. So every single area is in that. So every single one of us will pay into that. Where Nelson is not going to pay into our pool and we don't pay into their pool, but it is two separate services. So that's where the 180 services come from.
Right, okay.
Yeah, so Preston has a whole bunch of services that they pay into that Salmo doesn't benefit from. Same with the Custom, Castlegar, and Caswell. So
Sure, yeah, well, it's
Yeah.
much smaller communities.
yeah, it's like smaller community. Oh, and there's like Preston has a recreation facility, and that's who get benefits from it, right? So,
Right.
so that's why, yeah, overall, and so the entire budget package is online. So if somebody wanted to look through it, you could see all the 180 services, but generally it's easier to focus just on the ones that
That you're paying for.
yeah.
Yeah,
And then the detail behind this sheet are then the detailed budgets for each one of those services.
okay,
So S100 is the general administration service for the entire regional district.
okay,
And then it's got the detailed by account level budget. Well, it actually shows the actual cost last year, the budget for last year, and then the 5-year draft budget. Line by line by
I'd
line.
actually do a 5-year plan instead of yearly budget.
Yeah.
But the one that's important, of course, and the one that's most accurate is the one that says 2024, 2023 is already done. And, yeah, and it's like, although general admin is one we all pay in, but although it doesn't look like it, each service pays different amounts into general admin depending upon the way they use the main service. And general admin pays for the people in the office, basically, and all the rest of the stuff that goes in.
so payroll is within general admin?
No, yes, yes, so the payroll department, but there isn't a line. So payroll is going to be under salaries. So the payroll salaries is the top item not there in the next section.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay,
so the payroll staff are part of that salaries line item.
okay, okay,
And so it's payroll staff, finance, accounts payable, corporate administration, which looks after all the legal, insurance, and risk management side.
Human resources.
Human resources, information technology. So all the shared overhead is in general administration.
okay.
And
So an increase, just so I understand the property here, so an increase would be for 70 or something like that, for salary in 2024.
right, roughly. So from 2023 to 2024, right? So that's driven by a number of factors, and we just went over general admin. So there's a 6.2% wage increase in this budget for salaried staff.
Over 4 years.
No, over this 1 year. So that's driven by terms and basically employment agreement we have with employees that wage increases will match published CPI.
Okay,
And it's a 2-year lag, like smoothing. So the 6.2% is actually a catch up from 2 years ago when inflation was higher.
okay,
So it's a catch up in inflation. And the directors also get 6.2% according to the bylaw, the remuneration bylaw that was passed 2 years ago.
okay, okay,
And then there's some staffing increases that were approved in the early 2023 budget, and those positions started later in the year last year, so we didn't budget for a full year. Now they're being budgeted for in a full year.
okay.
So that's the part of the other reasons for the increase in salaries.
Okay.
And if a position didn't get filled, we didn't spend that money. It just got put into like a surplus, which would get put into this year, which will help with the taxation and stuff like that. So sometimes a position, like, for example, you have our CFO, we didn't start until November, October, like later on in the year.
April 2 years ago.
Oh, April, okay.
Yeah.
There was somebody else that started in November.
Yeah.
So we still budgeted for a position for that whole year, but we didn't have somebody in there until later on, so, right? So.
Yes. Yes, we do, during budget season, if we know for sure that position's not gonna start till November, then we'll only budget 2
Right.
months. But what often happens, not often, but when somebody leaves in the middle of the
Yeah.
year and we don't fill that position for 2 months, we have no way of knowing
Right.
when and how that's gonna happen. So if we don't budget for it, then we can get ourselves in trouble by not having those funds available to pay that position. So, and in other cases, if that position is vacant, we may have somebody covering for that position, so we won't decrease the budget for it. So anyway, there's a long sort of process to come up with those salaries.
So when you determine what the surplus is, then is the balance decreased, or is it funneled into budget?
We could just use it on this one. Here's prior year surplus.
Oh, okay.
Here's surplus. We actually tell you what the surplus is.
Yeah.
And then it will be in the budget somewhere where we're actually using it. And we might, don't ever think that we ever use the entire surplus, because we need to, I don't know in this one if we ever actually use the entire surplus, but when we have a surplus in different ones, sometimes we'll put it in a reserve, right? Because, you have equipment, you have computers, you have all those kind of things that you still have to break down and replace, right? You need that money, but every single penny that comes in is in our budgets to show, and this is all the services.
This is less.
Yeah.
This is what I'm saying.
The 180 services.
And I can look at any service of one of how the Salmo Pool did last year, you'll be in here.
Right.
If you want to know what our fire department did last year, you'll be on here. And it tells you what's made and what the surpluses are. And, for example, we relit my surpluses for the fire department because we have to save up for new equipment, right?
Yeah. Understandable.
Okay, well, I'll continue on now, that's great. Yeah, we're good. Let's talk about community sustainability, some projects, food, agriculture, and energy. So emergency management, for Salmon Area G, it's funded from, I believe, S158. So quite getting to be a busier and busier department. So basically planning and management underway for seasonal flooding, wildfires, drought. One of the big changes recently being implemented is the new Emergency and Disaster Management Act, which will require a fair bit of planning and risk assessment coordination, updating bylaws and policies, the Neighborhood Emergency Preparedness Program, Fire Smart, and Community Wildfire Resilience plans. So definitely a growing part of the Regional District Service delivery.
Emergency Management Act is a provincial thing, and they changed it this year. So that we have to do the planning for emergencies that may happen in the future. So, because we're not taken by surprise. And the problem with Stephen said they'll fine us if we don't do a good enough job, which is interesting. So,
What is the fine? You don't mind me asking.
I don't know if that's been,
it's in the legislation, but yeah.
The province can always, because we're a child of the province, so they can always penalize local government. They own us. Have they ever penalized?
The public.
Well, no, when I say, but I'm not talking about actual people, I'm talking about actual levels of government. The provincial government owns all local government. They just give us the land to take care of it. So legislation was written that they can penalize us if we destroy the land, if we do stuff. Have they ever done it? No. Are they trying to make us more accountable in our actions of what we do for emergency and for environment and stuff like that? Yes, because that's what is coming down with the housing and emergencies and flooding and fires and stuff like that.
So they haven't said what they're going to do.
No,
So you remember the big rainfall a couple of years ago? Well, where all the bridges washed out. Well, now the province has fixed them all. But they haven't made the improvement to make sure that they are going to be resilient in case of the next flood. And of course, they had that rainfall down the coast just a couple of weeks ago. And the Nooksack River, which is in the States, floods into Canada and it flooded again. And what they need to do is raise the level of the dam there by about 2 feet, but they haven't. So it makes it difficult because they're telling us we should be doing that those things. And sometimes they're not taking care of this. They just stand back and get the order. It's like the captain of the Titanic. Faster, faster. No, faster. Let's go on, sorry.
Okay, so one of the larger services is S187. So the regional district is responsible for basically waste management throughout the regional district. And so that's divided into 3 subregions, East, Central, and West. So Salmo and Area G are part of Central, Service 187. So a shared service for Salmo, Nelson, EFGD, and Caslo. So a 10% taxation and 10% tipping fee increase. The HV tailings facility continues to have some post-remediation and closure works. The Central West compost facility operations began last year. So I believe that's just down the road here. A drainage diversion project, some transfer station scale repairs, new equipment, legacy landfill assessment, and a couple other assessments are all on the work plan for this year. So a fairly busy year for Central Resource Recovery. A lot of this work is part of the waste management plan that's approved by the provincial government. So a lot of the work that it's done is done under regulation, under provincial regulation.
Okay.
Resource
It's available on your website, what you're reading from here?
This will be available on the website. So after this meeting, so sometime tomorrow on the meeting event for this meeting, the webpage, this will be uploaded as a PDF.
Okay.
And it'll be available for the public to go through.
resource recovery
Yeah.
strategy for
Yeah.
garbage collection
Yes,
and recycling.
yeah.
And composting.
And
And composting.
And hosting.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So that document is available on that webpage, and this one will be as well.
Okay.
Okay.
So waste management, where do I find it in?
yes,
That's 187.
Thing is waste management.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that includes,
These salaries are
This is
so
something.
to make it a little bit more concrete,
operates the program for refuse.
Yeah, well, they drive the trucks and run the recycling centers.
So these are subcontractors.
no, there's
yeah,
there's a mix of staff, and there are some contract work. So, I think staff, most of the trucks are driven by staff, but we do also do have contracted trucks. So there's people, operating the transfer station. So when you go to a transfer station, there's the staff at the gate.
Right.
There's staff, managing the recycling facilities. There's staff at the transfer station directing traffic, doing the cleanup. So that's, and then there's all supervision of all this staff.
Right.
So that includes the salaries of the supervision staff.
Okay.
and just to make it a little bit more confusing,
Sure. Sorry.
This is the recycling program and the organics program, and it says A117 and A120. This is all part of this also. So recycling is the most expensive feel-good program in the world.
Yeah.
And we give, I don't know, what is it?
$1 million a
$4
year.
million a year what it costs us just in Central. So when we talk about Central resource, if this is all the RDCK, okay, what we have is we have an east, a central, and a west.
Yeah.
Central people are Salmo, area G, area E, area F, Nelson, area D, and Caswell. That's it. It's just the strip is central.
It's the central.
And then the east is ABC and Creston.
Okay.
And then the west is the rest of that. Castlegar, I, J, K, H, Newcastle, Silverton.
Campbell
Trail, they're not in our. region.
Very good.
The line, yeah, heading this way is before Fruit Trail. Fruit Trail is in Movie boundary.
So just to make it a little bit more confusing.
Yeah.
When we talk about central, we're not talking about the whole regional district of the Central County. We're just talking about that strip. Because there's a lot of people that go, how can we have 3 different budgets for resource recovery? And we're all one regional district. Well, that's why. It's because we're separated that way.
Okay.
Okay?
All right, so we'll talk about Salmon Area recreational program service. So this includes operating capital improvements for pool, fitness center. So the pool upgrades were completed in 2023, so the pool should be back full operation this year. So we'll have some staff from other facilities assisting the startup. So increasing service level in fitness operations programs, camps, and a full staffing complement in aquatics.
I mean, it's a school program where we bring kids out and stuff.
So there's actually another swimming pool service program that's a contribution service that helps fund the pool, but there's also the other previous service was for the operations of the pool. And then there's also the Salmo Valley Youth and Community Center, which is basically the RDCK funds, and also rent space for the fitness center and other rec programs.
And the reason there's 2 things for the swimming pool is because they used to be run by a society since the pool was put in 1967 or something, 1967. But the society is finding it increasingly difficult to do that. But we don't want to close them down because societies can get money through things like, all sorts of ways.
Friends of the
Like the trust and some of the gambling monies and stuff like that. And we can't with local government. So we use them. They got raised $155,000 towards the fixing of the pool. That came from basically through the trust and a couple of other services. Okay. And that means that we don't have to raise taxes to do those kinds of things.
Okay.
If we get somebody else to pay, it's always nice.
Okay, to the next slide. There's a Salmon Wellness Center is also funded, as well as the library service. So we'll jump over to parks. So here's the various parks in S202, Cottonwood Lake, which is just south of Nelson, the Great Northern Trail, Sunshine Bay, Tagan Beach. So some of these are not part of Salmon Area G, but they're all part of the shared service. So there's a fair amount of work planned to maintain and upgrade these parks in the coming year.
Area G only has 1 park, and that's Rosewood Lake. And it is a wildlife refuge rather than a general use park, camping, all this stuff.
Right. Yeah, so there's some work planned there. And some access strategy work being done to identify strategic priorities for parks, trails, and water access. So here's a graph. We don't have to worry about all the little words in there, but it basically shows the growth in hectares for RDCA parks. And this is for all parks through the whole regional district from 1979 up to the current year. So a fairly large expansion of parks, with the most recent expansion being in Area H, Christova, which increased the size of the park. So a fair number of parks and a fairly substantial number of hectares to manage.
Area H is the Slocan Valley.
So when we talk about parks, there's 5 areas, E, F, G, Salmo, and Nelson have 56% of parks in all of the regional districts. So when you look at our budget, it is 50%, 56% of the budget.
And you manage all of that, or yeah.
Yeah,
So when people complain about,
So conservation officers, do they come under?
That's not
us?
No, they aren't, unless there's some sort of wildlife issue in those parks, but they're not covered through us. So we have staff that either supervises the maintenance on those parks, and then we have some seasonal staff that actually do the work.
we have staff, for example, for a Tiger Beach party on a Saturday night, and they didn't get chased out, the staff will go back.
So that would be bylaw staff.
That's right.
Right, so they're not under the parks. Parks actually designate the bylaw.
That's right.
Yeah.
But then also, of course, we have our own people,
Mhm.
yeah, who have done that kind of thing. We had a contract service that was reviewable.
Yeah.
Here, and he goes out there and cleans up for us, makes sure the washrooms are clean and stuff like that.
Right. So Area G, there's a water utility in Weimer, so some work planned there and upgrades in this year. So 6% water rate increase and a 5% water parcel frontage tax increase to fund operations and improvements.
If the parcel tax, if people, instead of paying just on the crop, right, they pay front foot of their property. So that's people who aren't using water in Weimar. When the water line goes by their door, they'll pay the parcel tax. So if they got 100 feet of frontage where the water line goes, they'll pay on that 100 feet, even if they don't have water, because somebody put the pipe in, and when they hook up, they'll be able to hook up for the use time. And the parcel tax was strictly for capital improvement, which it doesn't go to, power or things like that. It goes to pay for new pumps or new filters and all the rest of it.
So these fire services in Weimar, so a fairly substantial increase in taxation, primarily driven by increased contribution to a reserve for future fire apparatus replacements, and then also completing various projects. And then the Salmo contract, so this is where Area G pays the village of Salmo for some services surrounding the village of Salmo for rural areas. So the agreement was signed 2021 with annual increases for inflation. And again, it's the rural areas are protected by the Salmo Fire Department.
7 miles out from Salmo.
In every direction.
Except to Weimar, because it doesn't, it meets the Weimar.
Right.
But it's 7 miles east and west and south. And, and that's and the reason for that is they get fire protection from someone, but in return for paying for fire protection, they also push 50 insurance deductions from insurance companies. We're being covered for fire protection. To give you an example, it's I pay about $1,400 my house, which is valued at $1,000. And if we didn't have fire protection, but rated fire protection, I would be paying the area between $5,000 and $6,000 a year for insurance. So it changes, it's a financial benefit to everybody to have fire protection.
if they have insurance.
If they have it, if they don't, it's still going to be a benefit because if you come and put out their house when it's on fire and it's just a little fire, Insurance.
Yeah, or you save it.
Or you save their life.
Right. Can't put a price on that. And then also emergency 911 for the regional district. Most of the areas municipalities participate in this service besides the Nelson and Castlegar and Marie Preston. So when you phone 911, you're basically put through a dispatch, and then if it's fire, it's put through another dispatch. So the regional district contracts the two dispatch centers, one in the South Okanagan and one Fraser Fort George, to take those 911 calls and to either dispatch ambulance, police, or fire. And the cost of those dispatch centers is going up on a fairly regular basis. As you can see, about a $30,000 increase for 911 and a $24,000 for fire dispatch.
What's interesting is that if you have a landline, you pay towards the cost of 911. But if you have a cell phone, you don't pay. So, and more people are using cell phones, so that means the amount of money we get from landlines, not we get from landlines, goes down. So more has to come out of general taxation. There's been a discussion for years to try and get that changed, so that everybody pays.
And we are, as local government, lobbying other levels of government to get that switched over. So everybody's paying.
Yeah, so that everybody gets a cell phone pays. But in the end, you're either going to be paying for your cell phone or you're going to be paying for taxation. So
Yes, paying one way.
you can pay one way or another. But I guess the feeling is it's an undue burden that's being placed on property owners in the regional district.
There's a lot of people who have phones who are not property owners.
Right, yeah.
And they should be paying even because they use 911 more than anybody.
Yeah. So we roughly talked about, we talked about museum, swimming pool, and the recreation services where they're shared. So these three pie charts basically show the proportion that the village of Salmo pays versus Area G. So Area G with a slightly larger assessment base pays a slightly greater share.
2 times. Or 2 times greater assessment base. Slightly.
Okay, so now we'll go through a bunch of pie charts, where some of them are hard to read, but basically, this is where, depending where you live in the rural area, it shows you how different your regional district tax bill can be depending on what services you receive. So this first pie chart is for somebody living in Weimar that's receiving fire protection from the Weimar Fire Department. Almost half of their taxation goes towards funding the fire department in Weimar. And the next biggest item is the resource recovery or refuse disposal, and then everything else makes up a smaller component of that.
And that means things like water system, streetlights, all sorts of,
Their administration, recreation,
the other services like rec and then eventually we have our subcommittee.
So the next one is somebody living in Area G west or southwest of town and gets their fire services through the regional district Cooney boundary. So again, fire, a large portion of it, and then rec commission and refuse disposal making up the three of them about 60% of the tax bill.
Someone tell me, I'm trying to so Area G, where
So the Bombay,
okay,
so just a little bit farther past the Bombay,
okay,
there's a line that's Area G. And then, so that takes in all of Meadows and,
Like we're going back
Rose,
to
but
this.
we're coming back towards Salmo. So we're gonna take all of this right down to the border. We're gonna follow all the way down the border. We're gonna come to the Salmo Crescent cutoff. There's the big Cootie Pass. So it doesn't go to the top. There's a spot up there that's called no man's land. It's in nobody's area.
Okay,
So kind of round where the sheep are, you know where the sheep are? Okay, it's about 25 kilometers from Salmo. Okay, it comes in there and then it kind of follows the, river.
okay.
Not quite, but
Is
that
that include like airport? road
Yeah,
and that?
takes all of that,
To-
takes all of that, and it comes back to past Weimer, to, Hull side, or no, to Whitewater. It's a bigger,
Field is not in
No.
area G. And, the Conwood Lake is not in area G. That's as far as area north. And it's the summit of land between here and Kootenai Lake, the field that forms the line between this area and area A and area C.
Yeah, and
Is there a map of that on your?
there is online, yeah, you can look at and there's actually a really neat thing, called the web map, which you can go online and even look at individual properties and see how many properties there are in throughout the regional district, both in the municipalities and in the rural areas. So you can see, oh, look how big that property is, look how small that one is. Doesn't say who the owners are because that's not publicly available information, but it shows the size of the properties and all those things. And then it's also outlines which area they're in, whether they're in a rural area, in area G or H or wherever they are. So all that information is available.
But I can visually show you a big map that I have up on my wall in my office after the meeting. Sure.
Okay. All right. So the next is somebody in area G that's now getting their fire protection from the village of Salmo. So about a quarter of their cost is into fire protection, 20% into rec, and refuse disposal, another big chunk. And then various, about 10% or less into about a dozen other services.
And generally, you talk about the rural areas, but the people in Weimar voted for their street lights, they voted to pay for the community hall, they voted to pay for the cemetery. And so that's why those things are on their tax bill, because there were people who decided, the people in that area decided that's what they wanted to have, and they were going to pay for it.
So somebody who doesn't live, somebody lives in area G, but does not have any fire protection either from Weimar or the village of Salmo or Kootenai boundary now. There is no fire protection. So now the biggest items they're paying into are, as a proportion, are refuse disposal, rec commission, library, rec and parks, and rural administration. But their tax bill on $250,000 of home value is about half or less versus somebody who does have fire protection.
You do, fire protection is expensive, especially fire trucks going from 400 to 800 through here. So they have, and so it is expensive, but the other part is that what it costs you for fire protection is only about a quarter of the difference you'd be paying in insurance rates if you didn't have it. So those people there, although they're only paying 400,000 or 400, whatever it is, but if they went to the insurance company to insure the same property, they'd be paying 4 to 5 times what I would be paying with fire protection.
So Village of Salmo's, somebody living in the Village of Salmo, this is the RDCK tax bill portion of their property tax. They're paying mainly into refuse disposal and rec, a swimming pool and other recreation, making up almost half of it on the left-hand side between library and rec. Refuse disposal gets us to about 75%. general admin, and then you're about 80. So this pie chart here basically is the third page of taking that third page of the document you have there and putting it in graph form. So you can see the relative split of where somebody living in Salmo, where their share of regional district taxes are going. Okay. And so that's the presentation.
Okay,
So any more questions, either from,
well, yeah, it's a lot to
there is a lot.
absorb, so I have to, or having questions to present, I have to go.
Mhm.
Enjoy it.
Mhm. Sure, sure. Do you have, a particular email address or where people can present questions? Or if they're going to be in their forum where people can present their questions and.
Yeah, so this is, yeah,
So,
yeah, so this is a public meeting, so if you have questions now, so there's, after this meeting, so let's just back up a bit. So there are various committee and commission meetings that go on ongoing basis. So say you were really concerned about recreational services. So there's a rec committee that meets regularly.
okay,
If you're really concerned about and wanted to know about resource recovery and waste management in detail, there's sub-regional waste meetings where you can listen into, but the budget meetings for those have already concluded. So that's where things sort of start and go on throughout the year, in the last couple of months.
okay.
But if you have particular questions that you're looking for answers, so, you've got Mayor Lockwood's information there, so you can reach out and
My information.
ask her, and then if she's unable to answer it, she can reach out to somebody on staff. She'll know who to reach out to staff
Sure.
at the regional district. It might come to me, or it might go to a general manager who looks after rec or waste or fire, or it might funnel for me. So,
Okay, okay.
yeah.
So, all right, that's my email, my mayor email, or that's my RDCK email
Okay,
on that.
okay.
Because it is lots to try and,
Mhm. Especially in one hour periods.
yeah,
So
yeah.
it takes some people
Year,
a year
Or
or more to really understand. I mean, especially from looking at 180 service, but even looking at a small region,
yeah.
trying to understand how
Yeah.
even one service like waste, the resource recovery, the landfills, the transfer station, recycling and composting. I mean, you could attend a year's worth of resource recovery meetings and you'd still be just getting to understand it. So, lots to understand, but, we're here to help with that process.
But now it's 4-hour meetings every month.
So when does the draft become a final document?
March 31st is at the regular monthly board meeting.
Not 30, we're
Sorry, 21st.
21st.
21st is when the board has their final deliberation. So over the coming 3 weeks, there's, I believe, about 10 of these public meetings throughout the regional district. There'll
Okay,
be one in Preston and Slocan and Casper, Nelson, Oslo, and Cusp.
now are they each going to be talking about theirs?
Yes, they'll be
Just like-
focused, just like this. Today, we're focused on Salmon Area G.
Okay.
Each of those will be focused on their particular municipality areas.
Okay, so are there any more meetings for
here?
area?
No.
Okay. So for decisions that are going to be made between now and March 31st, are there going to be meetings that the public can be a part of?
You could check the website and see if there's any committee and commission meetings. that are related to Salmo. I'm not aware of any
I don't think
myself.
that there's any commissioner
There aren't any, okay,
that will affect budget.
yeah,
So when we were, our last, rec commission meeting that we had just a week and a half ago, that's all we did talk about for 2 hours was budget. And we talked the month before about budget. And then, so those numbers then get given to Yev, who is the chief financial officer, and he then,
well, they actually go to Joe.
I was gonna say, to make it very easily, he gets the numbers, plunks them in here by the general manager that was at our meeting. He takes those numbers and says, okay, this is what's going to go in the budget for Salmo and Mary G, for the pool, the rec center, the fitness center, the youth center. The public library, they have their budget meetings. They come and present to the council. Their requests are. It doesn't mean that we say yes or no to them. We just list their requests and then we decide if we think that they're acceptable. And I have to say, out of all the services that we fund, the library is the one place that comes and does delegation and tells the public what they're doing. Nobody else does that. So you have the museum, you have the youth center, the chamber that has economic dollars. We don't get that. But we give them money, so I mean, I'm saying no more. We're gonna hear from you. Or
Hi, Mom. It's ringing. Hi, Mom.
Hello.
Hello, hello. Hi, Mom. Oh, okay. Well, then I'll call back in a bit.
Okay.
I'll call back in a bit then.
Okay. All right, we're in
Sounds good. Okay, love you. See you in a bit.
Brian,
Yeah.
you're unmuted. Did you have any questions? We finished the whole presentation and you just seem to be joining right now, and we were just listening to your phone conversation, I guess.
I'm sorry. I'm just gonna click mute. Sorry about that.
No, that's okay. Did you have any questions for us?
Sorry, so that's sponsors.
Yeah, who's joined by Zoom?
That's me.
Oh, you're,
Yeah, yeah. So it shows me because I'm running, one computer is running the public meeting, the other one's got the presentation.
I see, okay.
So we do all of the work really is done. So when we talk about we're in a meeting that's just talking garbage or tax, right? And we talk for
The $5,800.
2 months on that. So this is a presentation of all of the topics.
Yeah, it was so 35.
Yeah, I get that. So, so for sustainability, for instance, there are community needs on that.
So the community sustainability, someone doesn't belong to it anymore. We used to. And the reason that we don't is it doesn't benefit us to be a part of it, because when there's a program that comes out of it, it goes into general administration, which it ends up getting funded out of there. And so I can go to a meeting, but at those meetings, you can always join online, or you can go in person to Nelson to the RDCK.
Okay.
Yeah,
Everything.
yeah. And that's the thing, that's the one good thing that's come out of COVID, is that you can, as we have 2 people that are joining from afar, I don't know where they're joining from, but people can join a meeting and not have to leave their home.
Yeah.
So, if anything, I was gonna say, if anything, out of COVID, it's about
Yeah.
anything.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, so you'll see that when you go through that, the public library did have a significant jump from last year, although they're producing way more programs and stuff like that, and some of their digital stuff that they have, that's gone skyrocket of people using in that, those costs. So that's where they presented and said that this is where, and so the Salmo Council, all 100% said, yes, we like it. We know they're very visual in town. Lots is going on. There's always lots of communication about it and that. So the council said, yes, let's give them their entire budget. And sits on that, the actual committee itself, the board. So he would, as no one part of that, he would have been a part of that budget process. Okay. What else do we have?
What services? Anybody remember?
There, so
I think 195.
So if there was anything that, an individual wanted to, discuss or had concerns about any of these things, they have until March 31st to make their answer.
no, I would sooner the better. There's, basically up to March 21st.
21st.
So the 23rd
Is when we adopt it at the board.
That's
We have to.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the
That's good to know.
difference between regional district and municipal, regional district has to adopt their budget by the end of March, where we don't have to, the local government doesn't, or municipal government doesn't have to adopt it until May 15th. We have until May, and some of that is that the regional district does theirs because we're mandated to do some stuff. We must do garbage. Like we're not allowed to not do that. We must do emergency, not allowed to not do that. But where as local or as municipal government, we must do water. We must do sewer, where regional doesn't. So the municipal government gets to know what the regional is going to charge. And not that it makes an effect, but we do take that into consideration when we're making our budget, is how much did the regional district go to, what can our taxpayers handle? Not much. Well, but that is one thing that I don't think people really realize, that is something that,
Well, I think people realize they just,
I don't know. It's interesting. It's interesting. But anyways, so yeah, we must set the regional district by March 31st, and then us here in municipal is May 15th.
okay.
So if you have questions, you can always phone myself or I'm here lots.
Yeah.
Phone me. I can go over stuff with you and
Sure, yeah.
make it a little bit. Yeah, you're right.
No, it's not talking about the Salmo Rec, you can trigger, okay? The last 23 budget was 98, and this one is one of the two, is that right?
What, no, it should be one.
Sorry, but,
This 195.
Is already broken down anywhere?
They're broken down on each page at the back.
And each section is broken down, but not, for something like this, if you wanted to know, for example.
so each one of those pages relates to a service that's on the front.
No, the grant would be.
Yeah, so I see,
80 is what they
I
have.
see how, when I go they're all 880 items and.
Yes.
But yeah, that's what the answers.
Yeah, so there's the number up here showing what service that is, but that's how they,
I get that.
there's a statement.
But I was wondering about each individual.
Line item,
Yeah,
is there more breakdown than that?
yeah, well, yeah, like some of them,
They asked for the,
Some, no, but there isn't, because otherwise the budget
exactly.
document, 1,000 pages then.
Yeah.
If there's items
But
that,
if we had questions about what,
what's in there,
it's not a particular item.
yeah, you can ask that. So one of the trickier ones is something called transfer to other services, right?
Okay.
And what's that's doing, so this part here is the expense section. So that means this service, for instance, is paying a fee into the general admin service.
Okay.
So each service has to stand on its own and be fully costed. So it takes a certain amount of general administration to support the public library and as community services as well. So when we're taxed for the service, some of it goes to cover overhead, so those are basically overhead items, and then the rest goes to the library.
Okay.
Versus like one of the much larger services is 187 pays quite a bit into general admin. It pays about $160,000 to cover overhead.
Okay.
And IT, and environmental services. But his budget is about $8 million a year. So, versus 100,000 for the library.
First used to be 9894.
Yeah.
But if you have any questions, so basically that's it. It's transferring to other services are basically overhead items.
So that's why I changed it.
That's what the challenge.
Environmental.
So there's a service called a service that captures all of the sort of shared environmental services costs, like the senior manager, the general manager. So we have those three separate subregions. And we have waste, recycling, and compost. Well, we don't want to take one person's salary and split it 6 ways and try to stay proportionate. So we throw it all into one bucket. So there's an environmental services overhead bucket, and then that's split out on this environmental services fees line. So that basically covers the general manager and the costs associated with it.
Okay. All right. Interesting. Thank you very much for the presentation.
That, you're welcome.
Thanks for showing up.
Yeah.
I'm surprised. I think you must have expected more.
We usually get the most out of the whole regional district. The most people come to budget is in Salmo and area.
Yeah, this
And
was
this year-
last year.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and it is
Well,
every,
online, I heard about it online and I thought that there was going to be quite a few people. So it's surprising. Yeah. That's why when I walked in, I thought, oh, it must be older. Something different. I didn't normally expect it much. Yeah. So are we offline now?
No, but we can go offline. Should we have the meeting?
Yeah.
Or-
nobody seems to have any questions.
Okay.
Brian or public, do you guys have, either one of you have questions?
Yeah, I just have an overall question on the tax increases. Just like balancing out, like if I was going to take this as an overview, like what percentages of the tax increases are staff? What percentage are material costs? What percentages are heating and electricity? I'm just wondering, to balance it out in my mind, like what would be the increases that, like how are they calculated, that sort of thing?
Yeah, I guess it really depends. So you're probably asking, the only way we can really answer that is from the regional district as a whole, but it really depends on what area you live in and what services you participate in. So we could talk about an average, and that average may not apply to where you live because it depends on what services you participate in. So I don't have the figures in front of me to that level of detail, but wages are probably 30 or 40% of that increase for the regional district as a whole. And then sort of contracted services and such are probably another 15 or 20. I don't have the rest of the breakdown in front of me. We don't, because we literally have, I don't know, 50 or 60 accounts. To put them into buckets sometimes gets, getting into buckets bigger that we really don't have. And then there's a whole bunch that kind of are like between 3 and 8%, like contribution to reserves, license and permit costs. So there's a bunch of items that are make up the rest of it, but we don't. But that's for the regional district as a whole.
Okay, so like contributions, wouldn't that be negative though? I mean, if you're calculating contributions, it's not increasing the taxes; it would be decreasing it, would it not, or no?
No, a contribution to reserves is actually potentially is an increase in.
Oh, I see.
It's funded by taxation to set money, to set funds aside for, either future capital investments or for site stabilization purposes, depending on the service.
I understand. I just wanted to clarify the staffing at I think you said around 30%, 30 or 40%
of the increase.
I understand.
The overall requisition increase.
And I'm
Sorry,
about that.
I should back that up. Not of the tax increase, but let me back that up. Of the expense increase. So there's not always a 1-to-1 ratio because this regional district requisition is going to tax requisition about $43 million and it's going to spend about 70. So a lot of the services are also funded by user fees, for instance. Waste is funded or by external grants. So there's fees when you go to the transfer station. There's fees when you go to rec centers. So when we say, wages are going up 30%, taxes are going up 30% of that there's not a 1-to-1 ratio there either, because you see there's a bit of a disconnect there.
I'm just wondering also about the hiring of is it calculated in the budget, the hiring of positions that are not filled? Like, is there positions that are created and that are not filled that are still in the budget, or are they not?
No, let's back up a little bit there. So when we talk about budgeting for positions that aren't filled, so if there's, it really depends. So if there's what we don't budget for and where surpluses come is, so in the middle of the year, if somebody leaves and that position isn't filled for 3 or 4 months, there's no way for us to predict that. And so we'll budget for a full year, and then a surplus will come out of that. But there's no way for us to budget for that because it's only predicted, and we have to budget over 180 different services. So we can't say, we're going to take 10% off each service for when somebody leaves, because if nobody leaves that service, then that service isn't fully funded and we run into trouble. So that when you hear about a position being unfilled, but being funded, it's because in those cases, if somebody leaves. But if we have a new position that isn't filled yet, and we're recruiting for, we will, in the budgets, predict when that position is going to start. So if they're going to start in June, then in the budget will show it starting in June. And then the other scenario is if we have a position that's is vacant because somebody's left and we're recruiting for it, we may use those funds to budget a temporary person filling that position, or doing that job. So there's about 3 different scenarios in play there.
And I'm just wondering about how as of last year, those positions that were either not filled or not positioned, is there any surplus from last year that carries on to this year? And what would be the percentage there?
Yeah, I don't have an exact number, but at any point in time, we've got, I don't know, 10 to 20 positions that are vacant or we're in the process of recruiting for.
Because that to me is a lot of money.
Yeah, but some of those are seasonal positions too, so I need to be careful there. So, if we're recruiting for a lifeguard position and it's not filled, then yes, there's potential that there will be surplus created. But again, if we don't budget for it, we haven't requisitioned for it, then that service will not be able to function.
And you don't know the surpluses from last year?
We have very good estimates of the surpluses from last year. So those in the current budget, the surplus carried forward, our latest estimates from those are shown at account 49100 as a prior year surplus. So we've gone through using, sort of our best estimates and put those budgets in to reduce taxation in the coming year.
How much did you say? 4,900,000?
Yeah,
is that right?
sorry, that's the account number in the budget. Is 49100. It's in the income statement of section of the budget statements.
That's
no,
quite a substantial amount, I guess. Eh? I mean, if it's surplus.
Yeah,
I mean, is that surplus calculated into the tax increase?
yes. So it goes to reduce. If that surplus is not carried forward or not available, the taxation will be greater. So it does go, for the most part, to reduce taxation. There are cases where the board looks at it and says, oh, that was a substantial surplus. It might have been driven by, say, really high user fees for building permits. And now building permits are forecast to drop off. So we're going to put some of that surplus into a stabilization fund, so we don't take large tax hits over the next year or two. So some services go into stabilization, but that's based on a board discussion or resolution at the board level. But for the most part, surpluses from prior years will roll into the next year's budget and reduce requisitions.
Okay, so you can explain to me the surpluses are rolled into tax reduction, and you said, what was it, the reserve? The reserve, is that like for a rainy day fund or?
Yeah, sometimes those reserves in some of our services do get rolled into, I don't know if rainy day is the right wording, we use stabilization.
Stabilization, correct.
Yeah, where we see user fees or permit fees or building application fees dropping off. It's interesting, building inspections, interesting that way, is where you have, we receive a whole bunch of revenue from building applications, but it might take a year or two for those buildings to get built. And so we have to set the money aside to pay the inspectors to do their job to see that construction through completion.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. All right, any other questions from the public? Okay, well, we'll close the meeting then. Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.